Well, hello, everybody. Sorry for the short delay there. Welcome to Rage in the Cage. We've got Dennis again, friends of brother Adam, talking about beekeeping for preppers. And how's it going today there, Dennis?
Oh, it's going great outside today. It's a beautiful beekeeping day. I was out this morning doing some beekeeping and some teaching on beekeeping to one of the people that I had as a student. And so today I think we'll be covering a little bit about stuff that's current that we're doing right now. So right now it's fifth month, 15th day. So that gives you an idea of roundabout where we are. And as usual, everything is local. So the time and the timing that you do for seasons has to be adjusted to your area. So if you're in the southern United States, you're going to have different timings than we do. Up here in Alberta, our springs usually aren't warm.
Yeah.
And things don't warm up to the point where you're ready to do splits and things until right about now. This is prime time to do splits. So, yeah, we'll be working on that today.
Okay. Yeah, it's been, 2 months, I guess, since we did the last one. Just the delays with my move and everything going on. We just haven't been able to get things together. But yeah, it is, it's technically spring, but it's getting on later in spring, warming up. So yeah, to keep things current. So with your bees, like how many have you got on the go right now?
Right now I have 6 hives. And I started out with 6 hives. And that being said, I've registered my 6 hives. So up here in Canada, you have to register your bees in the spring. They want to know how many you've made it through from the fall or from the winter, and then if you've purchased any other packages. So I went out and I purchased 6 nukes. And what has happened is the nukes have gotten big enough that I need to split them. And so I will be splitting them, but here's the issue. Up here in Canada, we can't just split them, wait the month until the queen is ready to go, and then if you wait that month, then we're already into July. So or June 15th if we started today. So it takes about a month to get a queen up and running. And one of the things that I do and I supply to my students, and I suppose I should be getting a little store, is I have something called my queen calendar.
Okay.
And it has a dial on the inside that moves, and then the days of the month on the outside. Okay. So this queen calendar helps me out. It gives me a way to jump ahead and just make some quick assessments. So if you'll notice that
it's upside down
right here, there's an egg right here, right?
Okay.
So that's the start line right there, and we're going to put it on today's date. Okay. So and this is just so that we can figure out when the new queen is going to be getting up and ready, because we're just starting today to do this. So I will put number 1 on 15. So oops, there we go.
Okay, it's upside down
number
for
1 on 15.
You're holding it up. I think you're holding it upside down.
You see there's an egg.
You're holding it upside down.
Oh, am I? Okay.
Yeah. There we go. Okay.
Yeah. So you'll see there's an egg right here.
Yep.
And right here is where it's laid. So it's on the 15th. So if we went around, we would have a mated queen and ready to go roundabout by the 10th of next month. If we started today. So we have to do concurrent things with beekeeping here because we have such a short beekeeping season. Usually what people would do is they would split it and maybe do a walk-away split. So when we split, what we're doing is allowing the bees to have a mechanical swarm. So bees naturally in the wild get ready in the spring. They make a queen cell, and when the queen cell is made and covered, like the end of the queen cell is covered and capped, then the old queen has been run around the hive and pissed off so much that she's ready to leave. She's been put on a diet and run around the hive. And so she goes to the outside of the hive and she says, okay, guys, let's go. And a whole bunch of bees go out with her. About 2/3 of the hive go out with her. And then they fly to a central location to where a whole bunch of areas that they might settle in are. And then they go and scout and they find a new hive. And then 1/3 of the hive comes back to the original hive, and 1/2 of the hive goes to the new hive that they've decided on. So that's the way it usually happens in a wild bee hive.
Okay.
As beekeepers, we don't want half of our hive disappearing, and we definitely don't want a queen disappearing as well, because that's time, and time is money.
Yep.
So what we want to do is we want to mechanically do what they do naturally, mechanical swarm. So we're going to cut the brood nest in half, and we're going to put it in different boxes. And then we're going to make sure that there's open larvae. So the larva is the little worm. You make sure that there's the larva in there in several of the cells, and that will make sure that whatever box the queen is in, they're fine. And whatever box the queen is not in, if they have those open larvae, they can make a queen for themselves. And that's how people do something called a walk-away split, mechanical split, walk-away split. And you put them in different areas in your yard, very far spaced apart, so that the original hive doesn't call all the bees back to their original hive. And then you're left with an empty hive. And what have you done other than kill a bunch of babies? Because they leave everything and it chills and it doesn't work. So you have to space them far distance apart in order for this to work. And usually what I do is I close up the hives with nets. So I tape a piece of screen on the front of the hive so that they can't get out. And you keep them in there for a day so that they get used to their new area. And then you take that off, and then they fly around and get used to their new area. They will make the queen in there, in the one that they don't have queens. However, because Canadians have 3 months essentially in our beekeeping year, we have to do several things at the same time so that we shorten the period of time before we need to have the queen out and doing, getting mated and coming back, and the bees doing all their stuff. Okay. So in thinking of that, what we want to do right now is if we are ready to split, then go ahead, do your walkaway splits. If you have the ability, go and purchase a queen from a reputable person that sells queens, and introduce your queen. But if you don't have a way of buying the queens, it's time to start making queens before the splits get to the point where they need to be, before the hives get to the point where they need to be split.
Okay, so I got a question then. So when you've got them all out flying around, and we're into the time of year when there's more birds and etc. out, is there an issue with predators? Is there anything you have to look out as far as certain species of birds that might be wanting a meal?
Swoop down and have a meal? Usually not. In our area, we don't have any birds that really snack on the bees.
Okay.
We like to call them spicy sky raisins. Um, they'll snack on one and then they won't snack on anymore
Uh, they find
because
out
they
not
sting
to.
on the way down.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, so you're not really worried about that. What you are worried about as far as predators are things that don't mind the sting. So things like raccoons, things like badgers, things like um, spiders. Okay, so
Okay.
I've had a spider put a web between the fence and my hive, and the bees would fly out, and you'd
Ah.
have a meal. And Spider doesn't care about stings because he goes and gives them his own little bit of venom,
Yeah.
and
That's right.
that's
Yeah.
that.
Okay. Oh,
So,
sorry.
and
There's a. Sorry. There's a cat in the
a
room.
friend.
Yeah. You
Okay,
coming?
so you have to worry about those. And you do have to worry about um, wasps in the spring, because wasps, cutie, wasps are indicator species, and they will go into a hive, and they're letting you know that that particular hive is weak. If they go into the hive, they'll
Okay.
go in and grab the babies out of the cells and fly them away, and take them back to their nest to feed to their babies.
Oh,
Protein
okay. Yep.
comes in lots of ways.
Okay.
So
So I guess I
yeah, so there's, go
So
ahead.
what I was going to say then, what you've just pointed out is that as far as predators go, the beekeeper can kind of keep an eye on things because again, your raccoon and your badger and these animals, I mean, they're kind of obvious and they're on the
Yeah.
ground. Your spider, well, if you see a spider web, there you go. And then as far as the wasps,
Mhm.
well, I mean, that's just nature. There's wasps, there's bumblebees, there's wild honeybees. So but again, like you said, if you see that activity, then you know to do something, right? So okay,
Yeah.
that was I was just thinking of that because
So
yeah, go ahead then. Yeah,
so what you need to do as a beekeeper is you need to spend some time
you
with
go
your
ahead. I'm
hive.
just going to get rid of the cat.
Okay. You need to spend some time with your hives. So you need to sit down and watch some bee TV and watch the bees come and go. You need to be around your hives and actually not be in them. Just be around them, and then you can, by being around your hives, you can see the normal way things are going, and you notice things like, you notice that in springtime the bees pick up the dead bees from the bottom of the hive, and they cart them up to the entrance, and then they fly a little ways from the hive and they drop the dead carcass on the ground. So you come out, you take a look, and you got 30 or 40 dead bees just on the ground there, and you're like, holy cow, normal. But
Yeah.
you just have to be observant of that, right? If you see a group of sticky dead bees in a pile, that usually means skunks been around. So you use your senses and you observe things and you see what's going on. Um,
Okay.
and it's important to spend some time just sitting watching BTV. So,
Yeah.
um, going back to where we were with concurrent things that we're going to be doing. Okay, so we're feeding our bees in the spring because our first flowers are just barely coming out now. So between the time that they start flying, which is plus 10, and the time that you're going to start doing queens, which is round about plus 5 at night. So
Okay.
the coldest it gets is more or less plus 5, is round about a good idea when you're going to start doing queens.
That's
Um,
Celsius, right?
in that time, they're going to need you to feed them nectar or sugar water, and they're going to need you to feed them pollen if you want to expand the brood nest fast in the spring. And we do want to do that. So if they don't, what happens is the queen lays her babies, and then after a little bit, the workers will go over and start eating their own babies because they don't have protein, and they need that protein. So what we want is, we don't want them doing that. So we put
No.
on protein patties on the top bars of the hive, so that they have that protein so that they're not eating their babies. So it's one of those things that we're doing right now. Okay, so we're feeding, we've got protein bar patties on there, and we're building up the brood nest. And as soon as we get to roundabout +5, then we have to start thinking, okay, I'm going to be splitting my hive soon. And you'll notice that in the lifetime of the hive, they usually start making the drones round about the time that you should be starting to think about making queen cells. Okay, so the drones, they take longer to get out of their capped cells. They take longer to emerge than queens do. And so they want to have a whole bunch of drones up and flying and out doing their thing before the queens hatch. That's the natural progression of the hive. Because if you have a queen that goes out and tries to mate and there's no boy bees around for her to mate with, then you're SOL and that queen ends up being a dud queen. So when you start seeing in your hive, this is another indicator that it's time for you to start doing queen cells. When you see in your hive the little popcorns that look that they're raised cocoons, and they remind me of popcorn. And when you start seeing those drone cells, then you need to start thinking, okay, now it's time for me to start making queens so that we can skip things ahead, right? So what we would do is there are several simple methods of making queens, and then there's technical methods. The simple methods usually they're hit and miss. I've had some times where I've had 6 to 10 queen cells happen, and then I've had times where nothing happened.
Okay.
So
when you
and
get
it's
that
all
many,
on how.
oh, sorry. When you get that many queens, are you like, as far as, you know, you're always talking to other beekeepers, etc., but then you also have people that want bees and neighbors, etc. Is that when you have an opportunity to move some of these queens out and get some other hives going elsewhere?
Oh, definitely. When you make queens, you always make more than you need, and then it's always a good little boost in the pocket to help you afford the bee feed, the sugar and patties, if you were to sell some of your queens, because those bugs, usually you can sell a queen for $45. So
Okay.
make some coin, hey? So if
Yeah.
you can figure out how to make 100 queens,
There you go. Okay.
got some
Yeah, because
bucks coming in.
I was watching some other YouTubers in our small community here, the prepper community that do bees and everything, and they were traveling to buy, you know, new hives and new queens and that kind of thing. They're in a different zone though. I mean, you're in zone 3 or 4. I'm thinking there, the gardening zones
Yep.
from North America, right?
Yep.
And I believe they're in a warmer zone. Like you were talking a little bit ago about 5 degrees. That you were talking Celsius, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
5 degrees Celsius. So, yeah, can't convert that in my head.
Oh, it's
But
okay.
Essentially, you want it warm enough so that they are able to be out every day flying, with the exception of the rainy days and windy days. They'll be out every day flying, collecting the stuff that they need to collect to make the hive healthy.
Okay.
And so, yeah, that's roundabout what we do.
How about
Sorry.
natural food for them, like flowers and things in the area? Like I think we talked about this on one of the earlier streams. I mean, for, you know, when your garden isn't quite ready yet and you're not growing, and maybe in your greenhouse, just putting out some flowers or this kind of thing, or is there enough, like, you know, where you're at in your experience, is there enough flowers and dandelions and things growing that they can get out and get some food? Or
Yes, definitely. Dandelions are a huge, big thing. I thank God for dandelions here in Canada, because they are our first flowers, and there's so many out there. And so our bees go out and they get tons of pollen from them. They're a huge pollen maker. And the nectar, it does taste pretty good. So
Okay, cool.
when they make it into honey. So yeah, there is. And then if you're in an urban area, you'd be amazed at how many flowers are in an urban area. I mean, you think urban is all pavement and sidewalks and stuff, but there are a lot of flowers out there that aren't being taken advantage of. And your bees will find them. You will
Well, yeah, because
find
there's a lot of towns and cities that have fruit trees that don't produce fruit, but they produce the flowers.
yeah.
There's a question in chat, and we covered this in another stream, but just touch on it quick. Shadow Dancer is asking, how are regular bees different from bumblebees? And I remember you talking about this before, that bumblebees are actually good. So
Yes.
can you just touch on that quick and then get on with what
Okay,
you're...
so the major difference between honeybees and bumblebees is what they come out of the winter in. Okay, so honeybees, they have to cluster around the queen and they have to keep the queen warm. And so all through the winter, they're in this huge big cluster and they're keeping the queen warm. And when they get to the spring, if they kept the queen warm, she's still fertile and she's still able to lay eggs. And they come out, then she starts laying her eggs and then they go. And they come out of winter with a huge amount of bees that were in the cluster and the queen. Bumblebees, when they come out of their winter, it's a fertilized queen and that's it. Everybody else has died.
Okay,
So
I remember that
fertilized
now.
queen flies out. She gets enough for her to munch on and crunch on, goes back to the place that she's decided to call home, and then she starts making her own nest. And she will make little teeny pots, and in the pots she'll put pollen, and in other pots she'll put honey. And there is such a minuscule amount of honey and pollen that is brought in by bumblebees that if we were to try and harvest it, we really wouldn't get very much of it out of it at all. I mean, it's just small amounts.
Okay.
So she starts eating her honey and starts eating her pollen, and then she makes another little pot and she puts an egg in it, and she'll make probably about 3 or 4 of workers that she's going to be having work for her, and she will lay them, and she will go out and bring back food and for them and for her, and she'll nurse them to the point where they go into their cocoons, into the covered pots, and then when they emerge as bumblebees, they will take over the gathering, and she will just make the nest. So, and bumblebees, they tear apart their nest and build it up somewhere else. And then they
Okay.
tear it apart and build it up. And it's all in the same little area, but they just are all the time tearing down and building up. And they only make little pots. And so as she goes, she'll have a storage of maybe 10, 15, 20 pots of honey and about double that of pollen. They're really fixated with pollen. They really like pollen. And that's why in the greenhouses they're used, they usually go to plants that have pollen and not necessarily nectar. So that's one of the things that they do in the greenhouses. But and she'll end up getting the nest to a fair decent size, and then she lays princesses. They're the new generation of queen. They will grow up and they will fly out and leave the hive and go find their own. They'll go out and they'll mate, and they'll go and find a nice place to sleep for the winter, and that's the cycle going all over again. And the original hive, usually everybody from the original hive, including the matriarch, the queen bee, will die off, and then all the princesses that went out, they're going to be the new queens the next year. So they're useful in some ways. Like I mentioned, they like plants that have pollen, whereas honeybees don't necessarily like only pollen plants. They will visit only pollen plants in the spring, but it's just not worth their time any other time during the year for them to go to only pollen plants. And so bumblebees will take pollen from things that you don't really think of as pollen givers, things like
Right.
grass,
Yeah. Yeah.
corn. They'll take it from anywhere.
Right.
And you will see most times bumblebees going up to your bird feeder where you've got some of the crushed corn in there, and they'll go in and pick up some of that dust from the crushed corn. They'll get pollen and protein anywhere they can find it.
So yeah, it's a good thing to have some bumblebees around with your honeybees because in our gardens, whether it be the outdoor garden for vegetables and fruits and everything else, or in the greenhouses, you have these different varieties, and the different bees are going to be beneficial, and they don't really interrupt each other either, do
No.
they?
They different stuff, so they really don't bother each other, and it's always fun to see them flying around. Just a really quick offside thing with bumblebees. Of course, in the spring, you see these big, huge bumblebees flying around. Those are the queens. So if you want to catch a queen, if you caught the queen and had it in an appropriate box, she would be in that box, get used to that box, want to stay there, and then you would have your beehive, your
Also for
bumblebee
your
beehive.
for your greenhouse then,
Yep,
especially.
very easy to do.
Cool.
In that box, you'll put a bit of sugar water with something floating on top of the sugar water so that they don't go whoop and drown.
Right.
And then you'll have some pollen patty on the other side, and then you'll have a wall in between your food chamber and a pretty big hole in that wall so that she can go into the back. And in the back, you'll have a square hive that has a bunch of pink insulation in there. They love pink insulation. And so they will make their nest on top of that pink insulation and just be happy as pigs in poop.
Okay,
so
cool.
That's how you do that. So I'm just going to grab some stuff here. I'm going to go off screen.
Okay.
So we have some honeycomb here.
Yep.
Okay. So this is comb that they would make either babies in or they would fill with honey. Okay. The lighter stuff is the newer stuff. And then if you notice, there is some dark stuff in here, right?
Okay. Yeah.
That's from last year's cocoons. Okay. So last year's cocoons, they spin a silk cocoon, and then once they cover it over, then the bees on the outside just kind of put a little bit of stuff on the outside to make sure that it keeps the humidity in but allows air to get out. And then they when they leave, they end up coloring it because the silk that they weave in there is colored brown. So that's what it looks like. So
oh, cool.
the easiest way, if you are doing beehives, having a frame that does not have any plastic medium in it. Usually there's a piece of plastic in the frame, and it's etched with cells to tell the bee where to make the cells, and it makes it so the bee makes bigger cells. But what we do, and this isn't, this is for another part of the lesson. So inside this frame here, what we would do is we would put a piece of wax along the top instead of these black things. We put a piece of wax along the top, and then they would build that out. And if we wanted to give more stability, if you notice, there are some holes here on the end.
Yeah.
So what we would do is we'd string fish line through and crisscross the fish line, and then they'd build the wax through the fish line, and that would give it some stability. Okay.
Okay.
That's the way that you would do it if you're going to do the method of making queens right now. See, because you're going to want to have to take out a piece of this comb that has eggs and larvae laid in it. Okay.
Okay.
So you put it in the hive, the queen lays eggs and larvae in it, and it's in a piece like this that you've just taken out, right?
Right. Okay.
Okay, so what you end up doing is, so you look here and you're looking for eggs and larvae that are um, of the right age. So by the right age, eggs hatch after 3 days and become larvae. And then you need to get larvae within day 1 of them hatching from the egg till day 3. So they're really small,
Ooh,
little teeny commas, little teeny things. And you need to have reading glasses
yeah.
to do this, because
Yeah.
you're going to be looking down into the cells. And the best way to tell what age they are is when you're looking in them. Okay, usually the cell is up like this, and cells on either side of the wax are made at an angle. So this is a cell here, and then this would be a cell here. Okay, and so when you look at the wax, and when you look at it, you tip it from this way, and you tip it up, and if you tip it the right way, you can see right into that cell. Okay,
Ah, yep,
so
yep.
when you look into the cell, you're going to see a blob of what looks like milk, and that is your royal jelly in there. And then in that blob of milk, you'll see a little white comma that shows that's between a 1 to 3 year or day old a larva.
Okay.
Okay. So the easiest way to do this, and this actually comes, I learned this from one of my internet mentors, and his name is the Fat Bee Man. What he does is he just goes and cuts, well, let's see here, cuts a strip out of here. So I'm
Okay.
just gonna grab
Okay.
you, and we're gonna go over. All right. And
Yep.
so when we're cutting this thing here, I'm just gonna make an incision like this. Okay, so let me see if I can get this held in the right area here. Oops. Did I lose you?
Nope, nope, we can see you.
Okay, I can't see you. So.
That's okay. We got you.
All right. Okay. There we go. Hopefully it won't do that. All right, so you just go and you cut this like this. Okay, and you get yourself a nice little square here. Like that. Okay, I'm going to bend you back up again. And you're going to have your frames. Got this ooey gooey frame here and the normal frame. And you're going to take this, and whatever side is your larva's on, that's going to go down.
Okay.
And so inside the box, you're going to set it like this inside the box. And it's just kind of set in there real nice in there. So, okay.
Yep, yeah.
They will work on it from the bottom up. And they'll be working underneath here, and they will draw out some queen cells out of this little piece here. So that is how the Fat Bee Man was telling you how you could just quickly cut it out and make yourself a bunch of queens. The other way is a method called OTS, on the spot. And on the spot queen making is really easy. So something you need to know about queens is the larvae know that particular, or the workers know that particular larva is supposed to be a queen by its situation, so the direction that it's pointing. And when you have that little piece pointed down, and you have that piece just pointed down, the down means that these cells on the up are going to be queens. Okay, so they will go and
Oh,
make those.
okay.
But on a frame that's vertical, how do you make sure that they know that that's supposed to be pointed down? And that's something that the guy who does the OTS method figured out. Is he figured out that if you drop the bottom out of the cell, so yeah, I'm going to
Yeah,
punch you now.
yeah.
You looked at it. Okay,
Well,
so this is a cell. Okay,
okay,
so if we were to go and take that cell and take the bottom out of that cell, cut it out, then there would be a roof and there'd be walls, but no bottom to it. So that tells the worker bees that that particular one is supposed to be a queen on a vertical. So instead of doing horizontal like this, we're actually going to do something on the frame. And this is called OTS. So we're going to go through and we're going to look for the right aged larva there. Okay. And when we find it, what we're going to do is we're just going to go to the bottom of the cell and pick out the bottom of that. Now you're going to disrupt the cell below it, but that's perfectly fine as long as you're not disrupting the larva. And so I'll just get on the other side of this.
okay.
So, yeah. So I did that right here. So I just kind of picked out the bottom of that, dropped the cells down, and usually what they do is when they drop the cells down like this, they usually put a squish mark, just like that. And so that'll tell you later on, that little indent in the wax will tell you that's where you tried the OTS method. And they will build the queen cells now from the top down. So you will do the OTS method in 3 or 4 different locations. Okay.
Okay.
This particular one I wouldn't do it on because it's got the plastic medium on there, right?
Ah,
But
okay.
just showing you how to do it.
Yeah.
I would do this on a frame that has a free comb on it, because if you do 3 or 4 of these OTS, then you're going to have to cut out the queen cell. And if
Okay.
you try and cut through this stuff, you're gonna cry yourself to sleep.
Okay. I have a question.
It's hard to do, and you're wrecking hardware that costs a lot of money to purchase. So you
Okay.
don't really want to do that.
Okay. I got a
Okay.
question.
Any questions?
Yeah. Okay. So you're taking the pieces of hive that you can use and you're utilizing them. Now,
Yep.
when you're done doing what you need to do, and you have a bunch of these hive pieces left over, now, is that something that you do or do not want in your compost? Is there another use for them? Should you just get rid of them? Like, does it, having them around the yard, does it cause any kind of, I'm looking from a prepper gardener, just a general
Right.
yard, you know what I'm saying, right? So having
Yeah,
those pieces
definitely.
that aren't being used, what do you do with them, basically?
So usually when we clean up our combs and everything, there's burr comb. So what burr comb is, you'll notice that on this one here, it started to separate, and what they do is they kind of mold it up so that there's a ladder between this frame and the next frame. And they'll end up putting babies behind here, and they'll treat this like a whole nother comb. And that causes issues. So
Okay.
what I do when I see that is, if it doesn't have babies in it, because I don't want to disrupt the babies, I will just take that off of there and I will keep that, because this here is a wax that is beautiful to melt down. This particular wax, you see how yellow this is?
Yeah.
This is great for things like makeup, like lip chap stuff. It's beautiful to mix in with that stuff and make beauty products with.
Okay,
The
so
darker wax, the black stuff, you don't want to use that for your makeup. But this stuff here, set this aside for your makeup, and oh, look at that. You can see right through them.
okay, yeah.
Cool.
Oh, okay. So what you're saying is those nice pieces like you've got there, with a little bit of research and the other things, you can make your own chapstick. You can make your own, uh, skin product or something like that, right? With your other natural products that we can find.
Yep. And with the
Right on.
brood comb, the darker wax, we usually save that for making candles,
Ah,
because the
yeah,
brood
of
wax,
course.
it's darker. It's where all the cocoons were. And one of the things that we talk about with wax is the liver of the hive. So this stuff here, the bees take it off of their body, and it's located on their abdomen. And they just go and they take off, like they've got little scales on their abdomen, and they
Okay.
go and they take it off, and then they chew it. And then after, as they're chewing it, then they go over and put it on the wall, and that starts their little wax comb. And it's masticated in their mouth. They use their whatever is equivalent to their spit, and it gets mixed in there, and it changes the nature of their wax that they take off, and it changes it into something like that. Now, as they go out and collect stuff from pollen from flowers and stuff, they'll get pesticides in their mouths, they'll get herbicides in their mouths, they'll get other stuff in their mouths that makes them sick. And the
Right.
only way they can get that out of their mouths is they go back to the hive, pull off a piece of wax, chew on it, and then they mold it onto their wall. But they've taken the poison that was in their mouth and they put it into the liver of the hive, the wax. So that's how they
Okay.
get out of their mouths and keep themselves a little more healthy. So on this new stuff, it hasn't been used very much and it hasn't been chewed on very much. So there's nothing as far as like pesticides and herbicides in here. But after a
Okay.
little while of them walking on it, of them chewing it, it starts collecting some of that stuff that we don't necessarily want to put on our faces and skin. So
And it
that's why we
darkens
use
up.
that particular wax for candles.
Okay, cool.
Okay, and so as you're and the way you do it is you put water into a pot that has some heat underneath it, and then you put these combs in the top, and you just let it melt. Okay, and then after you let it melt, then you take it off the heat and you set it aside and let it harden, and then you take that piece off, and that is the wax on top, and then the water stays on the bottom. The fly in the ointment is that these cocoons, they sit in between the wax and the water, so they float on top of the water, but they don't go on top of the wax. So when you take the wax out, a lot of times you got to scrape off the cocoons and crap off the back. Okay, and what I do with those shavings is they've got some wax in them, but they're mostly cocoons. So I scrape all of that off with a knife until I get just wax, and then I take that wax and I'll filter it a little bit more to get the bug legs and stuff out of it. But
Okay.
the shavings that you took off of there go back into the melter. You melt it again, and you get the wax off of that. Okay, but then you have just the cocoons and the water. It's usually this muck brown water. It's really gross. You take that water and the cocoons, and you put it in your compost heap, and you're recycling that part of the comb. But the good part of
Okay.
the comb that you want to harvest, you're
Okay,
able to
cool.
separate out.
Okay, so then the
All
next,
right.
like
So
yeah, so I did ask about the compost in the first question. So having these having that in the compost is not an issue for your bees or any of that.
they'll go
Like that.
back over and visit it, and they'll go taste whatever liquids or honey, leftover honey or anything that's in there. They'll go over and mess with it. And who cares?
Oh, okay. No,
The
that's
bees,
cool. I'm just yeah, because you know how things
yeah,
chemically change in your compost, and then you end up with all kinds of other things going on. So I just
yeah,
was asking. I guess no fear of a disease or a blight
no,
or anything like that. Okay, cool, good.
no.
That's good.
And
That's good.
if you're putting fruit peels and stuff in your compost, you'll actually have bees come over and take some of the liquids off of the fruits that are composting as well, and they'll just if they're looking for nectar, they'll get it anywhere they possibly can get it. So
Okay,
they'll fly over there and munch on it. And if they're in the compost
good.
heap, great, whatever. They
Okay,
won't
right on.
make a
That
nest
no.
in the compost heap, but
Okay.
they'll just go over and find whatever's interesting to them.
Okay, sweet. That's good news. Yeah, because that would be a big concern for a lot of folks, urban or rural, when you're gardening and you're having compost, etc. So that sets people's minds at ease for that. Thank you. Okay.
One of the things that I kind of laugh about with that is I rescue bees as well. So I go to people's houses and I collect unwanted swarms and I give them a home and place to live and put them to work.
Okay.
And I had a doctor call me and say, "Hey, I've got bees. I need you to come, rescue them." And I'm like, "Okay, great." Packed everything up. I had a suction device so that I could have my bee vac and extension cord and everything, and threw it all in a truck. Drove to his place, and he says, "Yeah, they're right back there." And I said, "Right back where?" "In my garbage can." I was like, "Okay." Lifted up the lid of the garbage can. 3 or 4 flew out. And I was like, "Okay."
That was it.
I guess you're not going to get the jar of honey that we usually give to the people to encourage them to report bees, because we don't want you reporting this again. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
So fun times. And the last method that I'm going to show you, there's some really involved methods of making queens, and it involves going into the cells, and you have these magnifying things on, magnifying glass or a great big huge magnifying lens in front of you, and you go in with a little scoop spoon made out of bamboo, and you go whoop, scoop it out, and you put it into a little they call them JCBC cups. That's the name of the company. But essentially, they're just little brown cups about this big, and they're hollow.
Mm-hmm.
They're just little cups, and you scoop out your 3-day-old larva, and you put it into the cup, and then you take that cup and you put it into this yellow holder. And if you remember, we had this frame here with the black things on it.
Yep,
Right?
remember that.
So we put our little cup that we've scooped the bee into, or the larva into here, push it down, and then we put that on the frame, and we stick this frame in the hive. And because the larva is pointed down, we're telling them that that is a queen.
Ah, that's a bee, not a queen. Gotcha.
Yeah. So we know that this is going to be a queen. They will start building out the queen cell on the bottom of this. And when they do, then you take this, fit it over top of the queen cell, and you can leave this in the hive. She will hatch and be in this area here. And then you go, "Thank you for the queen." And it's ready to go into a different hive.
Okay.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
So
That's
it takes a lot, and there's a lot to it. I made it sound simple, but there's a lot to it. I don't do the harvesting of the larva. My eyeballs just won't work for that. And for that, I have my beautiful wife who has eagle eyes,
Yeah,
and she
cool.
can get in there, and she does have a lens that she looks through to find them. But even with these readers, I just can't do that. So, and the other
Okay.
people that are good at that are teenagers, because their eyes are wonderful. So they're great on that. Now, that's one way of doing it. And that's a very technical way. And if you want a way that's not so technical, um, there is a quick way that you can do it. So these things here, these little cups again, okay, we're using the same cups. They go on the back over here, okay? Then you're going to be putting your bee in here, and she'll walk around in here, and she'll lay in each of these holes. And then you take the hole, or from the hole, the cup that has been laid in, and then you do that whole entire process that we just talked about.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, and I'm just not remembering the name of this method. It, yeah, it's just not coming to me right now because I'm on TV.
Okay.
But so it has two pieces of plastic that go on. Yeah, super awesome. I'm definitely going to be a movie star. All right, so that goes on top. This is a queen excluder, so it keeps the queen in, but the workers can go through and feed the queen and can work on the cells to prepare them for the queen to lay in. So that goes on top there. And then this is just a one that goes on the back. Okay, and it goes on the back like that. And it holds the little brown cups in, so that they
Okay.
don't fall out inside your hive. And that goes on the front, and that's what you put in your hive. And when you put it in your hive, this is what it's going to look like.
Ah, yeah, you can see it in there. Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Yeah. So, and on this side, I don't have the plastic on this side, but you'll notice that they have, over top of the little cups, they've made cells. So
Yep.
she'll think that this is ready to go. So she'll start putting her eggs in there, and then on the back, I just pop that off, pull out the green little or the brown little cups, and away I go. And you'll notice that on either side of this is their food and protein patties, and there was some larvae in here. You notice it's all brown.
That's right. Yeah. Okay.
So there was larvae in here. So the queen wanted to be over here doing stuff on here, and so she laid this area here. And when she got over here, then I would put that queen excluder over top and would keep her in that area laying. And what that does is it helps you with your timing. You know that you have the right age of bees in here because you know when you put the queen in, and then you can count 3 days and 3 days more, and then you're ready to do all of your stuff, all your manipulations. Those methods are harder to do. You have to
Okay.
have the inside of the hive in the proper state, otherwise that stuff doesn't work. And I'm just going to tell you a little story. Ooh, hey, don't want Bixby coming back. Bixby. So you need the proper things happening in your hive. So you need to have the food, and I have a train going by. You have to have the food in the right amount. So you have to have nectar or sugar water dripping in the hive, so that they're drinking the sugar water really quick. You have to have your protein patties on top of the frames, and you have to have them in there like that and essentially closed up. You can't have them coming and going. Closed up, and have no hope at all for a queen. They have to be hungry to have a queen. They need that. They need to have that need. If they don't, if you have other frames of larvae in there with them, they will make one of those into a queen, right? And so a lot of times in your hive that you're preparing for this method, um, you will have put bees in there. You'll have shook bees in there from other hives, and they'll go in. After you shake them in, they'll go into the hive, and then you'll pick a frame of capped brood. So that means all of the tops are sealed off, all the cocoon tops are sealed off, and they're capped. That means that they don't require feed. They don't require the bees to go and help them feed them and keep them warm. You just put that in there, and they have no ability to make capped brood into queen. And the capped brood will hatch, and that capped brood is what's going to feed your queen cells. So, and in there, you're going to be putting one of these, and what they will do is when they have those caps on there, I'll just do one for
Yeah.
the sake of time. So
Okay.
you've got the brown cup in there.
Yep.
Okay. So you'll be putting this in that hive, and they will clean and prepare that cup, and they will put a little tiny bit of wax on it so that it seems like home, right? So they will clean and prepare this. You put that in there with nothing in it and let them do that. Then when you're ready to either scoop it out and put it in, or put it into your
Yeah.
I'm just not remembering how the name
Is
of this.
that
But when you're
is that
ready to
an
put it in here, then it's cleaned and ready to go, right?
is
And
that an
smells like
encapsulator? Is that
what's that?
is that an encapsulator or
Uh,
something word like that?
uh,
Not sure. Okay.
it's
Anyway, okay, so we're just
I'll have
about
to look it up.
yeah.
So yeah, so when after you've gotten all the conditions ready and they're happy in there, they have brood that is capped in there, and they've been in there for about 3 days. That's when you're doing some of the more technical stuff, and then you're going to be putting your egg in there, or I mean your larva in there, and you're going to be
Yeah.
putting all of these will have little yellow things on them and little cups in there, and you'll put that in your hive, and then you'll come back in about 3 days, and they will have decided which ones they want to accept, because they can tell which ones are going to live, which ones are going to die.
Right.
They'll accept several of them, and then they'll start building queen cells down from there. And then once you got the queen cells capped, that's when you put that little queen cage over top of it. And once it's capped, they don't need to be fed. They've got all their food on the inside of their queen cell, and then you're ready to go.
Okay,
And
cool.
it's really technical. Takes about a year or two to get the hang of it, but that's amazing. Well,
Okay. So we're
so
just
you
about at
have
yeah,
your
we're just about done though. We're just about at the hour.
cutout method, you have your OTS method, and then you have some of the more technical methods. The only way that you're ever going to get into this and learn about this is just diving in and doing it.
Diving in.
So
Yep.
you need to get a few books to read, and you should be able to figure it out from the books. Also, there's lots of videos on YouTube that are able to do that. I'll be back in 1 second.
Okay. So while he's away, we're getting ready to close out the hour. So this time of year, if you're around, if you're not a beekeeper but you're around them, sounds like you can get some wax. Sounds like that, and the beekeepers are going to have. There's the 2 different waxes that are available, and the bees are out already helping. Your plants and everything else, right? So, yeah.
So I just wanted to show
Did
this
you?
book here.
Okay. Contemporary queen rearing.
rearing.
Okay.
This is my little textbook that I use for learning how to do beekeeping, for queen rearing, for making queens. So go ahead and take that book. Again, it's Contemporary Queen Rearing by Harry Laidlaw. So it is a really good book. I recommend it.
Cool. Okay, we'll wrap it up
Thank
there.
you so much.
Yeah, thank you. No, and you and I will we'll go backstage after this, and we'll figure out when we can come on next. Because again, now that I kind of have a schedule and you've kind of got a schedule, and I'm actually set up, we can dig into this a little bit more like we were doing before, and get the series rolling again. So thanks very much, Dennis. Thanks everybody for coming. And we'll put the reminder up as soon as, like I said, as soon as we know when we can get back on with this series, we will we'll have the reminder up so that you all know too. So thanks everybody. Take care. Have a great day.